Good morning, everyone, and welcome. So prior to about 1999, in the 1999, 2000, no.
I'll give that part up.
Oh, you'll give that time.
Yeah.
But yeah, so prior to when I showed up, the workforce, I've been here about 2.5 years. Prior to then they had a professional development system in Workforce Solutions Central Texas that required our staff to do 25 hours of professional development time. So that could be anything from staff training that we do internally to conferences like this, any kind of online training that's relevant to their job they could do, or if they want to do outside training. This is annually, and they were appraised on it at their annual appraisal. TWC came up with a grant to promote apprenticeship programs, and that's where it kind of spurred this idea of the apprenticeship program for us.
Okay, so in the world where we got a grant, you know how you write for grants and then you figure it out as you go along what you're actually going to do. You know, no one ever says that out loud, but we all know we do it. So I got an apprenticeship grant, and the goal of the grant was for us to help encourage businesses to become apprenticeship sites. So I started researching why would they do that. And I learned it increases the workforce pipeline. It improves employee engagement and retention. It helps employers to have employees with the specific skills that they want them to have. And it allows production to be tied to wages instead of just paying someone because they've done another year. You actually are paying someone because they have new skills that are contributing to the goals of the organization. You know, you get a national credential, and it's a way to grow your own employees. And the main thing that caught my eye, you heard I have a PhD. Well, my dissertation was in succession planning in public organizations. So the whole concept of being able to develop a workforce pipeline was in the back of my mind. So in the course of trying to figure out how I'm going to convince employers that they should do apprenticeship, I just wanted it. I thought, why wouldn't I do this? Why would I ask other people to do something I'm not willing to do myself? But it sort of came down, all of the reasons that another organization should do it was the exact reason that Workforce should do it. So I took it to our leadership team, and like Jared said, we already had a professional development requirement. It was already incentivized so that when someone was doing their annual appraisal, if they didn't do their 25 hours of professional development, then they wouldn't get an incentive. So we already had a system in place, but it was fairly fragmented, and it wasn't really based on trying to accomplish the goals of our workforce system. It definitely wasn't tied to trying to create our next level leaders. So the whole concept that every business has of where am I getting my next generation workforce is really built into an apprenticeship system, much more than into a random training design, which is sort of what we had. So that's the high level. Why are we doing this? The big why. It made sense to us at the time. And I will tell you, when I talk to employers now, I have a much better experience to tell them, because I'm not saying you should do this. I'm saying we do this, and here's why it might work for you too. So it's a better philosophy, but truthfully, it makes it a lot easier to sell when you actually believe in what you're doing. So are you following in the slides? We're good. Okay. So a long time ago, well before we were ever thinking about apprenticeship programs, some of you have been here long enough, but most of you are young. So the old people used to be the majority, but luckily that isn't the case anymore. But people who were working at Workforce in the 1997 to 1999 phase is when Texas legislation changed. Most of you know that, some of you don't, but it integrated all of the workforce systems from all the different programs from all the different agencies into one organization, the Texas Workforce Commission. I'm giving you a little history lesson here because it's relevant. At that time, workforce boards replaced private industry councils, and the boards had the job of managing local workforce systems. When we took that on, you know, most of them, because they used to be private industry councils for the most part, they knew the Job Training Partnership Act. That's what they knew. But now they had choices, SNAP NCP and childcare. Childcare is like, oh my God, childcare. And at the time, they had no concept what those things were or how they worked or what to do with them. So they brought in an organization called Learning Designs that went to every workforce area in Texas and asked them about the jobs that they have and what does it take to do those jobs and what do they look like. And the answer to that question is found on page 6 of your handy dandy little book. And you'll see on page 6, they did a very good job of saying, this is the job title. These are all the other things it's called. And here are the job description and here's what they do. The key part of this is those functional competencies that are at the end, because that is the things that are used to create apprenticeship programs or functional competencies. So in the world where they did that, it created a system where we could know how to train staff in specific jobs for the competencies they need. I don't know if y'all have ever seen this before, but it's still useful information. And even though it was done a long time ago, it's still relatively accurate. So from that world, the Learning Designs had a partner organization or a parallel organization called the National Workforce Institute that began developing training courses and different testing mechanisms so that people could learn their jobs and learn the competencies of the job. And National Workforce Institute is still trains in Houston. I think that's the workforce area that still maintains it. So that's sort of the big overview of it. And that takes us to what we did with that information. So I'm moving quickly. Y'all jump in if I go too fast, okay? All right, we're going to try to cover a lot, but Jared's going to tell you how we use that competency.
All right, so we took all those competencies and we work very closely with our centers, and we want to make sure that everything that we plan, they're part of and they know what's going on. Since we're developing this for our case managers, we took all the competencies based off of the research that TWC did and the National Institute, and we laid that out in front of the leadership group, like what is most important for a case manager being a workforce specialist for their job to function. This will be our training program for all of our staff, but also if there's a new hire, so they know how to go through what's expected of them to develop our culture. So took all those lists and we put them up on the wall, each definition with the word, and then we voted on them. So we had these little stickers, weighted voting. So we all had 7. So we got up there and we put what our 7 most important competencies were. And that developed our list of competencies for each of our levels of training. We did this, a couple of series of it to go through, and that's how we came up with our Journeyman level and what was important for us. And then we expanded on this once we were finished seeing that our Journeyman and our Apprentice were getting along pretty far in the program, that we needed to go to our next level. And that's where we came up with the mastery level.
Okay, so the things that, when you look at this on a high level, y'all have all done the voting, the dot voting thing. It's an easy way to figure out what are the most important things to people. We did have all of those competencies that are listed in all of those pages. Actually, Learning Designs literally wrote definitions for each of them, and they're on page 15 through, I think, like 23. So when we did this, we weren't just saying, I like accounting principles. We were saying, this is what accounting principles mean in this world. And by doing that, people were making, and these were leadership that wanted, these are what we want all staff to know in our organization. So what had initially been, you're a greeter at the front door, you're a workforce specialist, you're this, you're that, became a what competencies do we want to know for every single person in our organization, no matter where they work. So it's that 20, we came up with 20 things that we believed were foundational for every job. And we used, like I said, these definitions, but if you look starting on page 27, our Journeyman level training is a 2-year training course that's divided into 6-month segments. So our plan was that every 6 months, an employee would learn and demonstrate the competencies that are listed under level 1. And it wasn't that at the end of 6 months, you had to check that off. We assumed it would take about 6 months, but it is self-paced. So if it took somebody 4 months or 3 months or 10 months, then we would work with them in that and let them work at their own level. With an apprenticeship program, you'll notice there's hours out there. That's because in an apprenticeship program, you get about 144 hours of classroom training every year. And with these 6 months, they got 144 hours every year. They took it at their own pace. If, for example, people who've been here a long time pretty much know the workforce system, all that stuff I told you about what happened in 1999, many people in that room were going, boring, boring, already know. So in the world where we recognized we had a lot of tenured staff, they could test out. And if they passed the test for those courses, then they got the hours of credit without taking the courses. So it's just like if you were in college, you can CLEP a course similar to that. So we set it up so that tenured people weren't having to take training they didn't care about, and that we got everyone on the same level for the competencies that mattered to us. And the reason I keep saying it matters to us is because if you did the same thing with all of those competencies, then I would assume the things that matter in your organization won't be an exact match to what matters in our organization. So you want to go through the process of what do we actually care about? And keep in mind, like I said, these are competency based. These are not, I'm training a workforce specialist. That kind of training still happens, but that's not the job of our apprenticeship program. It's to set certain behaviors that we think are important in our system. For example, we think everybody needs customer service. We don't care what job you're doing. If you can't provide good customer service, you're not a good match for our organization. So if that kind of helps you understand the difference between the training that you're doing to prepare someone for the job and the training that an apprenticeship program can do to prepare someone to be the right match for your organization. And there can be an overlap, but in general, that's sort of the concept that we used. What Jared wanted me to lead up to that I'm now going to get to is that the journeyman level lasts for about 2 years. At the end of every 6 months, when people demonstrate, they take the courses or they pass the courses or the test for the courses. And at the end of that, when they say, okay, I know all this stuff, then there is a point at which their supervisor or the journeyman look at what they're doing and see that they're doing it consistently. So you can't come in and say, watch me do good customer service, and then they check it off. They have to see it consistently delivered in the way that is appropriate for what we want. And at the end of that, so they've seen it, more than once, it seems to be pretty accurate, and they're doing it when you're not watching or when they think you're not watching, so that we actually know they know the competencies and they've learned what we want them to learn. And how many times have you been to training or you sent people to training and they come back and they just never actually do the training? Or they think they're going to do it, but then they just go back to their regular habits. So this is the type of training where we want to see it actually delivered on site, which we love. And so it's all competency based. When they complete their level and they have demonstrated the competency consistently, they get a $600 incentive. So over the course of 2 years, in addition to annual raises, they can get $1,200 for participating in the program and learning the behaviors we'd like them to learn. So it is incentivized, and that works well for us. Now that we've been doing this for a while and we have people, Jared's our first completer, so yay, Jared. He is our first apprenticeship journeyman to have completed the program. And we are now ready to start the mastery level. So wouldn't you love to see or be able to say on your resume that you're a master workforce professional, a Department of Labor licensed master workforce professional? Or wouldn't you love to say that you're a Department of Labor licensed master workforce executive? It just sounds so good. I mean, I have a lot of degrees. I still like that one. It just sounds good. So it is a way that allows people to develop in the field, but it also gives them a license that other people don't have. That gives them bragging rights and the ability to say that they have skills and abilities that not only have they learned them, but they've demonstrated them consistently. So we're in the process of developing our mastery level, and you will see the competencies that we have for those listed on pages 31 and 32. And for the most part, we've just started this process, and that sort of tells you where we're going. The workforce professional is a 2-year program. The executive is a 3-year program. So we kind of covered that all in one big fell swoop. But now we're going to get to the overall, why are we doing this and how does it work part. So we talked about the journeyman level is 2 years, and that the mastery level is 2 to 3 years, depending on the slot you take. The journeyman level was a required. Everyone in our system, we thought we need a foundation. It's just too important not to have that. So anyone who wasn't, and you have to have journeymen who are always supervising the apprentices. So those people were appointed based on their experience and their tenure, because you have to set it up where you have people who are already mentoring when the program begins. But everyone else is required to complete the workforce professional training. For the mastery level, we realize that some people are very satisfied with their job. It isn't some, they don't want to be a master. They just want to do their job and go home. They want to serve their customers. That is their level of experience. So for the master levels, what we're looking is we're creating the next level workforce system, the next level leaders, the ones who want to be supervisors, who want to do administrative functions. So the higher level workforce. So this is sort of our leadership pipeline. So those are optional. And it's very interesting. People at the lowest level who know they want to grow have a pipeline. They can do that now. So that I would call it, in the world of work, I would call it our C-suite. So that's more or less our C-suite group. So we don't anticipate having trouble getting people to participate, because they're actually more interested in the mastery than they were in the journeyman. So that sort of shows you how that part goes. And we're going over it pretty quickly. But I had mentioned that one of the things is we have a very tenured staff. So when we implemented this, we had a pretty good strategy for that. Jared's going to tell you all about it.
So Linda's already kind of alluded to it. I flipped to a slide as she was kind of discussing it, but me going into there, I'm about 2.5 years into here working. Before I was in the Army, so I had a base knowledge of skills. So like level 1, if you look at it, it's the customer service, the computer skills and all that. But as a new hire, I have to go do all that training still, because it's our culture. We're trying to build what we want to do. But our seasoned staff, they can go in there and test out. So if they test out of that competency, they still have to be observed through the competency observation period through the supervisor. So that's kind of the different tracks right there. Is, yes, you can get tested out. You can demonstrate the competency, and you can finish fast if you're one of our seasoned staff. Although they still have to do that observation period that lasts probably about 6 months, because we want to make sure that they understand fully what we're looking for that culture. But as a new hire, we want them to complete all levels of it and kind of do that learning part, and kind of it's our culture that we're trying to develop based off of this, like I was saying. I think you hit everything else on that.
Did I? Well, actually, you'll notice there's lots of ins and outs. So there's lots of ways that people can test out, that they can demonstrate the competency, and they can get their journeyman credentials. But the main thing is that we tried to make it where it accomplished what we needed without being overly burdensome, especially on tenured staff who are saying things like, "You want me to do what?" I could teach the course on workforce systems. And we're like, yes, you could test out. So we think we made it fairly friendly. We've mentioned several times that you have to demonstrate the competencies. It isn't just that you learn them and you say you know them. So on page 33, we gave you one example for every single competency that we have listed. And when they finish that training, the journeyman that is over the apprentice gets this list that says, here are the things that they can do. And is it accurate? Are they doing it consistently? So they'll sign off on that, and it does go in not only into their personnel files, but also gets uploaded into the DOL apprenticeship system. So that sort of tells you how we're doing it locally. It's, you know, it is very much designed for what Central Texas wants, but it is also flexible enough that it would work with any workforce system with the adjustments that we discussed. But now that we told you the kind of how we do it, what we wanted to talk about and what we wanted to cover was how do you get registered with DOL, and what does that look like? And what is the actual process once you are an apprenticeship site, so that you have an understanding of what it takes and how serious DOL is. This isn't a cookie cutter thing that we say we're going to do 144 hours and they say, okay, we know you will, you know, go forth and do good things. They want documentation of things, and they do monitor our programs. But in general, 144 hours of training, we talked about that. For the record, 144 hours of training comes out to about 4 hours a week of classroom training. And we always get asked, do we pay them while they're in training? And the answer is, there's not necessarily a requirement that we do that, but we do. We expect them to be able to do their training on office time. We don't make them do it on their lunch hour or anything like that. But we have release time, we have professional development hours, things like that. So it comes out to about 144 hours, but almost everybody tests out of some things. I will tell you that no one tested out of customer service, including the leaders, because, you know, we tested before we got to, before we put the courses out for a staff, we took the tests ourselves just to see that were they things that we actually care about? Were they accurate? Did they teach the things we wanted taught? And the customer service test is harder than you know. So let me just say, well, nobody got to test out a customer service. No matter what you think you know, there's more to know. So that was actually a learning experience for everyone. We also have work-based training, and that is basically what we talked about, where you're learning it on site, where you're learning our culture. What we expect for customer service is more of you're learning it while you're on the job, and there has to be 2,000 hours of work-based training. Now, what per year? So, and you know, that's about a year's worth of training of actual full-time training. So the real message there is that this is a full-time job. When you're working as an apprentice is a full-time job, not a part-time, do it when you feel like it kind of thing. It is the way we do business. So we built that into our system. There is like I mentioned, there is a journeyman to apprentice ratio. And what it comes down to is you can't just say everybody in my organization is an apprentice and I don't have any journeyman, because people have to have people they go to. And luckily we had a lot of tenured staff. We have team leads, we have people who are good at what they do, but for the most part, it was our upper level leadership who had designed the program became the journeyman, because we were the ones that knew what behaviors we needed and we knew how to coach those behaviors. So when you're building that system, think about 8 to 10 apprentices per journeyman. And what that might mean, I'm going to use, Kara's in the room, I'm going to use her as an example. She has about 16 employees under her. So she can't be the journeyman for all 16. She can't manage it like that. So Julie is her supervisor, and Julie and Kara share the journeyman roles for Kara's staff. So that would be an example of how you have to do that when you have a pipeline or a workforce system that has people with more than 8 employees.
Do you follow one-to-one?
We don't have that. And it isn't that they never meet one-to-one, because we definitely have that. You know, some people need coaching and some people need assistance, but we don't have it built in where every single person gets one-on-one meetings with their journeyman. We haven't really had anyone that really had that need, but we have had where individuals are having trouble with a particular competency, And in that case, then their journeyman will coach them through or bring in help or even remediate them on something that is just a concept they're not grasping.
If they pass the exam, do they still have to demonstrate
Yes,
The work base.
yes, they do.
And how many chances do they get if they fail the test out?
If they fail the test, if you test out and you fail, then you have to take the courses. And you have to, let's say you test out, you fail the course. And it's not really fail, you have to make 80 or higher. So we're looking that you really know this stuff. So if you make less than 80, you have to take all the courses that are listed. And if you take a course and you don't pass it, you have to retake the course. They are self-paced and you know, the courses last maybe a couple of hours. So it's not like you're in college having to take a 16-hour course. But for any course they fail, they retake it. And if they can't, let's say you take it twice and you just cannot pass that test, then you can go to your journeyman and say, I don't know what I'm getting wrong. I don't know what I'm not understanding. And they can coach you. So it's not a system that's set up for you pass on your own or you fail on your own. We want people to understand what the competencies we need them to do. So if they don't understand them, then it's our job to help them where they're having problems. So it really isn't a got you system. It really is more about, we want people to have a certain behaviors in our system.
Do you consider them as micro credentials as well? As they move on, as they pass the competency, do you consider them as micro credentials as well?
No, we actually don't. And this isn't, and I kind of know where you're going to the stackable credential thing. It doesn't do that because these aren't industry recognized certificates that they're getting. They are basically competencies that are important in our system, and they're important in the workforce system in general based on the research, but they are not the overall credential. I mean, once you're a licensed workforce professional journeyman, or you're a master workforce professional, that's the credential, and that's what it leads to, but there is no credential lower. So let's see, have I covered all this building? Okay. Up until now, the journeyman level, we've been able to use workforce programs that were already in Department of Labor. The mastery level has never been done. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because I remember I mentioned a part where I'll need y'all's help. What's going to happen is we've defined these competencies, and we're now in the process of developing training for those competencies. When we apply to Department of Labor, they are going to go to the workforce system and say, do you agree that these competencies are appropriate for a workforce professional or for a workforce executive? We know we have the research to back it up, but they are going to want people in the workforce system to confirm that these are actual competencies that people care about. So part of the process of becoming a brand new apprenticeship for Department of Labor is to get others in the industry to agree that these are right for the industry. So hopefully y'all will agree with us, and you've now seen the research of, we didn't just make this stuff up. So if you're asked, and we are kind of pushing that we'd rather ask people in Texas, because once you get out of Texas, they really don't understand they just don't. They don't understand that we have childcare and choices and SNAP and NCP and all these other programs that change what our competencies need to be. So when you look at the competencies, I think people in Texas will understand it far more than anyone else. And also our research was based on input from Texas workforce areas. So that's sort of what we're doing with that. Go ahead.
And what's good is for new systems being developed, you can use our answer to the problem for your own system. You can tweak your program, but there's a solution already set. So it's not like where we had to go out and develop it on our own. The answer's there, and there's resources to help develop it. So like I say in the Army, it's plagiarism, but hey, someone's already created the wheel, just use it.
Yeah. we call it invited plagiarism. Anything we can make that y'all can use is certainly yours. One of the things that I will tell you, if you're interested in doing this, and hopefully you are, because this is a really great way to develop a system that creates your own workforce staff. But assuming that you're interested, the first thing I did was, I was like, oh, we're going to do this. And I went and downloaded the forms, and oh my God, those forms are scary. The first thing I saw was, what's your rapids code? And I'm like, I've been in workforce for like 30 years. I have no idea what a rapids code is. So I can't imagine being an employer trying to complete forms that say things like, what's your rapids code? You're like, I don't know, what's a rapids code? So I literally opened the form and took about a minute to look at it, maybe not even that long. And I called Desi and said, okay, we need help. We're not, we want to do it, but we don't know how. And I also realized at that point that if I'm going to help employers do it, those forms matter. And I had no idea, and no one in our system knew how to fill out those forms. So we brought in Department of Labor and TWC, both came to our workforce area. And you'll love this. They trained us on how to complete the forms for employers by completing them for us. So it took them about 2 hours. It wasn't a long time to complete the forms, but when you don't know what the answers are, it's just crazy. So we were able to not only learn how to help employers do it, but they actually helped us complete our application. And it was not a long process. It's just those forms are so scary. So if if you follow this process, the easiest way is to bring Department of Labor in, bring in your business services unit, make it beneficial for everyone. And they really didn't mind at all telling us what the answers were. So it's like, what does that mean? Okay, so they really did coach us through what we need to do and what were our gaps and how to answer the questions. So if you are working with an employer, if you're trying to do it yourself, my absolute advice is bring in anybody who's going to do it and let Department of Labor or Desi's team show you how. So now that we talked about how you get an application in, Jared's going to tell you all about tracking.
So this is where I kind of come into it and fell into it after I got hired, was tracking and reporting of the LMS system. So we use an LMS system for all of our training. Everything is online. We did originally set up where we're going to have some in-person training. Well, COVID kicked in and we kind of had to adjust from there. Everything is now within a learning management system. It's on demand, more or less. Individuals can do it at their own pace. From there, we can assign any additional training that we're doing internally or they've completed. We can put it in the system. We can pull transcripts out of there to figure out where they are along their training process, what they completed, and then what I need to email the supervisor and say, hey, what's up with your mentee here, and why aren't they doing their job or progressing along their training? So it's a two-way street where the supervisor has to keep not on top of them, but kind of encourage our staff members to do it. And then the staff member has to work with their supervisor to get that support, that coaching, to get that competency observed. So I pull all those records. I use their transcripts. I pull their training certificates and the competency tracking, their sheet, to say that they've observed and they complete the competencies. And that's what I have to put into DOL. DOL, they do a check every 2 years to make sure that we are on track and everything's going together. And that's their recertification that our program is, yes, we're doing good. DOL, you would think that their system is cumbersome, the rapid system. It's actually very user intuitive. You have to input all of your registrants, your participants' information in there. So they're just asking for demographic information. So veteran status, their education level, ethnicity for their tracking. A lot of it you can opt out, say that, oh, I don't want to put this information if the applicant doesn't want to. But also within that system, that's where, like I said, is I put those training certificates to show our progress along it. And once we get to everyone in there and complete it, right now, I think we have about 5 to 10 that's on level 4, so almost complete. I was the guinea pig. So I was managing the DOL system, but also doing the training. So I'm like, let's see how this works to complete it. So I actually complete all the training and submit my stuff. And 48 hours later, I'm now registered a journeyman for workforce professional. Yeah.
You know, you're something, right?
Yeah. overall DOL is a very easy system to do with. It's more of the admin side of it and putting the paperwork. So the certificates that we internally provide through the LMS are the check and balance within DOL that they use to ensure that we're doing the training. They've already gone through and saw all of our training plans. It's been approved, we're registered. So now it's just tracking to make sure all of our staff complete it. So I'm the one that cracks the whip that the supervisors say, come on, do it.
Okay, so we're up to lessons learned. We're moving along fairly quickly, and I think that hopefully we're answering your questions. But some of the lessons learned that we've already talked about, you want to bring in the experts. Don't try to do it by yourself. We did learn that really you want to incentivize it. Now, this is sort of funny. You have people who are like, I don't need this because I've been here 100 years and I know the system. And then you have the other group who hear that they're going to get $600 after they demonstrate 4 competencies, and they basically lock themselves in the office and don't serve anyone ever until they finish. They want all that training and they want it up front. And so we have to point out that, if you're locked in the office, you're not really going to get that customer service competency. So, you have to balance it. You have to do it over time. We need, even if you finish all the training, we still have to see the competencies demonstrated. So it was sort of a learning curve for the people who really were all about getting it very quickly, and the people who really were wondering what the value is for them if they are, let's say they think they're going to retire in a year or 2 years and they don't really see the value for them. So we had to encourage people at all levels that this is valuable training. It matters. It's our foundation. And it was a coaching process at the beginning, but it's something that I think over time people have, they understand it and they agree with it. We did implement about 2 to 3 months before COVID was real strong. So, and I don't know what y'all were doing, but we had people that were in the office in our admin building, but everyone else was working from home. And we actually extended our hours. We were working 7 to 7. We were working, I think 7 days a week. We tried to match TWC's UI hours, and they, as they expanded, we expanded. And that helped staff work at different times when they had to train, they had to teach their kids at home, things like that. So we changed our hours, and that made it much more flexible for staff. But we answered calls constantly. And, just like UI was, we were on the phone constantly trying to get people. And that was the only question they had. I don't know about y'all. That was the question. UI, how do I get it? I have problems. That was our response, just like everyone else. And so we were doing that, and we did not require them to somehow feed into that, do 4 hours of training while you're doing that too. So between training their kids and getting kids in school and trying to meet the workload that had expanded to every minute of every day, someone's telling you a horrible story about how they can't feed their kids or their family. So during that time, we did not enforce the UI. We called Department of Labor and told them, and they agreed. So we more or less postponed it. So those kind of things, you have to be flexible. You have to have a system that says what is the priority. And although we do care about the foundation for our staff, we adjusted for the circumstance, for the natural disaster that we were facing. So that was a huge thing for us. Like, do we make them still do this? And I can't imagine having added one more thing to their workload. So it was just an unreasonable request, and we did not make it. What else?
You have a lot of individuals that want to do their own kind of learning track. So ones that are working on a college, kind of further in their college education. We do allow them to do an alternate training track so that they're not stuck doing this. They are given the option to do both at the same time if they want it to. But if they're like, hey, I want to focus on finish my bachelor's and finish my master's, this takes a lot of my time, I don't want to do the apprenticeship program, their supervisor can approve them to do this alternate track. So we're very flexible with that. Even if they want to do like a specific skill for personal development, say they're PMP project management, we'll allow them to do that. They'll have to provide the training certificate, and that accounts for their training for that period. and then they'll go back into the apprenticeship program once they complete. So we're very flexible, alternate training plans. And then Linda alluded to this a little while earlier, is the 4 hours a week. You want to ensure that they have the time to do their training. So if during COVID where they're all busy, we noticed that, yeah, we can't do this. So now that we're back in the office, we have that professional development time. We have time built into where they can do this training and complete it and still do their job.
So you kind of have a big overview of, we tried to give you, like beginning to end, what we did and how we did it, so you could see how it worked. And we also wanted you to have the piece that it's, even when you build it, Department of Labor will stay involved. So that's, it's useful from the sense, if you ever wanted to do it yourself, it's a fairly consistent system for training. You can make it be anything you wanted it to be. But also, I want you to walk away with an understanding that you are working with employers who are trying to do this, or hopefully they're trying to do this and you're encouraging them. In that world, the more you understand what they are going through, the easier it will be for you to help guide them. Either way, call Department of Labor and DESI. That's your first step. That's always going to be your first step and your best and our best advice to you. So, so how do we know if we have questions online?
Send me an email, Jared Porritt, my contact's up right now, and I could forward you tomorrow when I get back to the office. I'll send those out.
And they did say, we sent the packet in and they said they'd post it with the PowerPoint, but I guess they missed. But we can certainly distribute that. Y'all are an easy group. Nothing for us? Roy, just say it out loud because I can't hear you. That's all right. They know who I am. So Roy, my last name is misspelled and Jared typed the slide.
The email's correct. So.
Yeah, so just so you know what's funny. Anything else that we can tell y'all? Any other little interesting tidbits? You want to hear about the second level procurement? We have to, once we did our first level, this is quick. So just a little bit of how we're doing this. When we did our journeyman level training, Learning Designs had already developed almost everything we needed. And what we didn't get from Learning Designs, we were able to get from the Texas Workforce Commission through their training catalog. So we did almost everything online. We were able to pretty much nail down exactly what we needed to be for someone to be a journeyman and complete the competencies that are listed. For the mastery level, none of that training exists in the world. Well, I'm sure maybe somewhere in the world, but not in our world. So what we're doing is we're working with Learning Designs. We still have a contract with them. They're already procured, thank God. And all we have to do is create this. What training do we want? Learning Designs is going to design it for us. The reason that matters to you is because we're paying for that training to be developed, which means if you decided to use the similar competencies or you decided to create an apprenticeship program yourself, you won't have to pay that development fee. So you would get the training at a much lesser cost. We're doing the initial. We might partner up with Gulf Coast since they have money and we're poor. And since Learning Designs is already in Gulf Coast, we're hoping that we can get a match there for some training that they need and maybe help offset some costs. But when you're thinking about developing a system, it's always different when it's training that exists versus training that you need that doesn't exist. So that was a big learning experience for us. So I'll share that as one of the lessons learned. I think that's it. If we don't have any more questions, we're going to finish really, really early. Is that it for everyone? We're good? Okay, guys, you.
Nope, got one.
Oh, I almost had it. Sorry, guys.
So first, thank you. It's really good information. But I'm curious from Kara, was that
Yep.
Kara?
how she tracks it on her end with the staff in her office?
You might have to go to a mic, Kara.
Come up here,
Yeah,
Kara.
you come on up.
So
Yeah.
we do have our staff here that do the supervising part, so we're lucky. So
Yeah, go ahead, tell them, Kara.
Yes, so I was kind of in the ground floor of the LMS in the beginning when I kind of oversaw and put everybody's trainings in the beginning through the centers. And then I became a supervisor. And so now I have, as Linda said, about 16 staff of my own. And so we do that around the time that they do their annual appraisal. We keep track of kind of where they're at. We do a look-see, get an idea of maybe what they still need to work on. Some people are not, haven't finished their LMS yet or their level. So we just, like Jared said, give them motivation, guidance, see what we can help them with, give them some time to get it done. We do have professional development time where we allow them to work in that and get that completed. So usually it's around the appraisal time and that at that point we get to sit down with them, see where they're at, what's going on with them. Yeah.
So all of our leadership at the centers, they have access to the LMS system. So I'm not the only one that has it. They had it before I did. And because of their duties, assignments got greater and they're like, here, Jared, help out. So I took over a lot of it, but they still have access to the whole thing. So they can pull transcripts. They can look at everyone's records to get their completion statuses. So I'm not the bottleneck. And they're not the bottleneck. So everyone can get in there and see everything.
So LMS is learning management system. And it's just the way we track who's completed what and where are they in the system and we can, see what they're doing well in and what they're having problems with.
Just curious, what LMS do you use? Do you use Moodle, Canvas, or Blackboard?
So we use Latitude Learning. It's just a smaller one out there. There's lots of options out there. Each one, I've been looking at a few. Each one has their own curriculum that you can use or you can add in files on there. It's just what is the most cost effective for you and what's your goal. So they're different user friendlies, but if you want extremely user friendly, your cost is going to be up there. So just have to think that in mind.
So we went with cheap. Is that it for everyone? Thank you so much for joining us and letting us tell you our story. We really do appreciate it.
I corrected it.